to YouTube.
In the audience, and he had a question for me right as we went on the air, so we could just start with that one.
Sure. So do you want to share your screen first, maybe?
Am I sharing my screen with
You
you?
are. I
I thought
mean,
I
do you
was.
want me to show it on screen?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, it should be visible now.
Okay. All right. Yep, I see it here. Okay, I guess we're live for another talking and docking this morning. We have some exciting stuff that we're going to do today. We have to update the Astro Docs to Heidi, how many versions of Starlight are we jumping here when we update?
I think it's, if we count only minor, I guess it may be only two, but some were pretty big
Pretty
for
hefty.
Docs because we took some features from Docs to implement them in Starlight. So I guess we need to remove them from Docs, otherwise we will get twice the same features. And another one
Right.
is style related, switching to cascade layers. So it's always a
Mm,
tricky one because it's very easy when you work in a non-cascade layer world to write some rules. You don't even see them, and Starlight would override them, and you'd say, "Oh, okay, this looks fine." But you do not
yes.
notice that Starlight is overriding some of them. But when you switch to a cascade layer world, everything you write is actually applied. So, and Starlight will not override anything, so you may find some oddities, some changes that are not expected.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's a
that's
great
a great
exercise.
use of
Yeah,
having everybody look together and try to spot the difference, anything that didn't resolve properly. And then tomorrow is the new live content collections API bash, and I have a pretty almost finished draft, I think, of the docs for the new experimental feature. So we'll go through those today. I think I've done most of my polishing, but I still have a section I need to add. And so that'll be helpful too if people want to just get an introduction before jumping into the API batch and actually using it tomorrow. We will also soon be unexperimentalizing. We'll be promoting responsive images to stable, which has been a huge docs task of taking content from one little experimental page and then putting it all throughout docs. So that one is mostly ready to go, but we still have some items on our checklist. So again, having people review that and take a look and see that what we've done makes sense and that we haven't lost any information. No contents have shifted during the flight. That's what we'll be doing today. But just as we were about to go live, Emma had one last comment on a PR we've been working on. So I thought we would do that here. I'm going to jump to this PR. I'm going to share this tab instead, and that should update. Emma has been doing a ton of work on experimental CSP, content security policy, and it feels like I'm looking at 3 PRs every day for this. Um, and as you know, when we have a minor or when we have an experimental feature, normally we wouldn't add new features until a minor, we wouldn't do any breaking changes until a major. But when a feature is experimental, that it's no holds barred. We can do anything we want, even in a patch. And Emma is making full use of that. So we've just been going through so many CSP PRs. This one in particular, as you can see, adds a new feature, fixes a bug. Progress is just going going full steam ahead on this feature. And Emma and I have both been through this. I've been going through the docs, and there is one comment left. I think it's, oh, and I see Armand was in the PR 6 minutes ago. There was this one here. Oh, yes, this is the error message. So we don't often think about error messages as being part of docs, but um, if something goes wrong and you get an error message, you really want that error message to be clear. Um, when we write error messages, we try to keep the language as simple and straight ahead as possible. And I know sometimes it sounds like, oh, Sarah just wants this sentence to sound a little better, or Sarah's being really picky about the grammar. But another thing to remember about error messages is that we we provide software for a global community, and people will often have to take these messages and put them into something like Google Translate to figure out what they mean. So the better formed in English these messages are, the better chance we give our international community a chance to understand what is happening. So as part of reviewing docs for new features, I also do review error messages. So here's one. Um, we have an error message here that the adapter tried to, so the adapter tried to enable your hosted CSP headers, but the project is not using the CSP feature. And so my comment was, I think we could use another sentence here guiding the user as to like what to do in this situation. Because if the message is, hey, the adapter tried to use CSP, but you didn't set up any CSP, then and me as the user, I'm thinking, why is my adapter trying to do this? I didn't even say that I wanted the feature. So this is another key part of an error message is not only should people understand what is happening, but they should know what to do about it or whether there's anything they can do about it. So some of our error messages say, if you see this, it's not you, it's us, file a bug. Otherwise, it'll tell you, oh, it's not our problem, it's this font provider's problem. Go file a bug with them. Or it will tell you what steps you can take. So while Emma is here, Emma, maybe you'd like to share. So Emma's actual question for this is, well, how should we tell people via hint or inside the message itself? Um, Emma, I'm curious because I still don't know what the answer is. When would you get this message? What would have to be happening for this message to happen?
Yeah, so I was just writing about the fact that we actually need to change the whole message because we changed things during the PR. So just to give you some historic facts. So when I implemented the PR the first time, it was like really around the CSP, like all the namings and logic and everything. But then during the discussion on the roadmap, Matt suggested to change the name of this feature which was called experimental hosted CSP, something like that. And Matt suggested to call it hosted headers or static headers, whatever, which is essentially more generic, which is really good because like it would allow us in the future to add more stuff and CSP is just one of the consumers of this possible feature. So now we have now the case is different. So we have an adapter feature which is really broad. It's not just for here at the time of implementation, it's just about CSP. But in the future, we could have, I don't know, caching or other stuff, like any header that an adapter can create via their configuration file. And CSP is just one of the consumers. So we need to come up with a good message saying, okay, you're using this feature, but thing is like a CSP is the only consumer now. So I'm not sure if it should be an error message or not, actually. It's quite weird.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That's helpful to know. Sorry, I just went on mute for a second because I started coughing. So then if we look at this, so this is around line 418. I want to just check and see what the name of this. Oh, it's GitHub, so it's going to take a while. Let's see how quickly I can get here. Okay, so we've got a description. I'm looking for the name. Okay, so the name of this is Adapter Experimental CSP Disabled. Are we keeping this particular error message as very specific to CSP?
No. No, we
Okay,
won't.
so we want to. All right, we want to generalize it here then.
Yeah, actually, I think that error shouldn't exist at all now. Because now
that works for me, but
yeah, now the feature is really broad. The feature works like this. If you enable it, Astro won't add any meta tags in the static pages. That's the idea, I think. Still need to understand it. But it's experimental, so at least we know that things can change. But to make it broad, Astro won't add any meta tags in the header, but instead they will be provided to the adapter, and the adapter can consume them and generate a configuration file. So when you will visit, I don't know, your Cloudflare hosted static website, Cloudflare will read its configuration file called _headers, and this file will contain essentially a map of name of the header, a value of the header. So that's the how the feature would work.
Right. Okay, so for this PR, are you thinking we just scrap this error?
I think so, yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me because as I say, the error itself didn't seem to be one that felt very actionable for the user. It's like other stuff tried to do stuff on you and was difficult to let them know what they should do. Now, so even if we scrap this error message, could someone still encounter this problem? Could the adapter still be trying to use their headers? Like, could this even happen if someone hasn't set the information to configure CSP and yet the adapter is trying to use CSP information and create headers?
It won't be a problem. If you don't enable CSP right now, and the adapter enables this feature, it won't receive it. Like it will still receive the headers during the build, but these headers won't contain the CSP meta tags.
Okay. So then if we just entirely delete this error message, are we good with this BR?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Just
All
need
right,
to
and
update the change log to better highlight the this feature, because I think we put some code and everything, but I want to make it. I want to review it still, so I might require, because yeah, we have CSP meta tags and things like that, but it's really generic. CSP is just one of the use cases.
okay. Okay, so this, so even the whole PR is going to change to not just be CSP specific?
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Like the code is already generic, and
yeah.
everything is ready. I just need to tweak again the docs. So I will do it during this time.
Okay.
So maybe in an alpha or whatever. If we're still online and you want to, we can review it or
Okay,
not.
sure, sounds great. So then, yes, I'd say error message can go. And then we're just tweaking this so that it's not entirely CSP focused, but CSP is one of the use cases. So we would just describe this as, an example right now. Is that the only example that we have, right? Like the only use case we have for this right now? It's just in
Yes.
future, it will be more generic. Yeah. Yeah. So then
Yeah.
it's perfectly it's perfectly fine to make sure that we don't talk about this specifically as CSP, but use it as an example for when people
Uh,
might want to use it right now.
yeah. Like that's the thing. Like that's the only concrete example that we can provide to the user. However, you can already use it in a different way. For example, you have your middleware for static pages and you want to, I don't know, add some caching strategy or some specific header for some specific page. So from the middleware, you might want, is it possible to? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, if you try to access the headers in a static page, Astro yells at you. He says, "Oh, you can't. You don't exist." Okay, so never mind. Scratch that. Let's just focus on CSP, and that's it.
Sure, sure. Now, Fryuni may find a way to use this in other ways, but yes, I think most adapter authors, yeah, it would be fine to just focus on this as a particular use case. Okay, it sounds great. So yes, as you say, if we're still going, then we can look over whatever changes you propose.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. Thank you for joining and thank you for providing that extra context. And now I don't have to worry about that error message. So that's just perfectly good by me. Okay. So what else we have for today? So we did want to review the Starlight deploy preview. We did want to look at potentially uh, some responsive image docs and some live content loader docs. Hideo, do you want to switch to the Starlight
We
pull request
can.
now?
We can if
And
you
we can
want.
take a look over that?
Yeah, I'll
Sure.
just hide your screen then. You don't have to stop streaming,
Yep.
I'm just hiding it here. And we should be able to switch to my.
Ooh,
Is that,
yeah,
is it?
that looks like it works.
Okay, perfect.
I don't think we've done switching who is sharing screen before yet, so.
I don't think so. I don't think so. So, yeah, I give a bit of a recap at the very beginning, but to give another one, we basically want to upgrade Astro Docs, which is, I think, using Starlight 0.31, and we want to switch to the latest version, which is something like 34.3 or something. So usually it's fairly, sometimes it's just upgrading the package, sometimes it's a few minor change, but this time it was a bit more involved because like I said, we did quite a few changes in this version. So what is on top of my head is we moved what we called in Starlight root data. We moved that to astro.locals. So we potentially had to do some refactor around that. Maybe I'll show that later. If we take a look at the live docs, we have in our pages heading anchor links. So this was a custom feature built by Chris in Astro Docs, but now this has been ported to Starlight. So we had to remove that from Docs because otherwise you get two links here, and we definitely do not want that. And then again, let me read chat. Oh, but you may not have seen, I did not really improve anything because it's still broken. But I found a way to improve it for real this time and potentially fix the issue. So yeah, this needs to be removed from our docs. And the last one, maybe the switch to cascade layers. So this one is a bit tricky because it can lead to very sometimes subtle differences. For example, I'm just gonna say something, for example, between the prerequisite heading on this side, maybe we have 2 pixels less of a margin or something like that, because basically any style written is applied, whereas before it may have been overridden by Starlight. So it will be a very good exercise in this call to have people taking a look, browsing the website, see if they can find some things that looks obviously wrong, obviously different, and maybe if some people can, for example, check a page in the preview I will share later and compare it to the live version, see if it's the same. I'm actually not that much afraid about content because it should be most of the time very easy to spot, but maybe on some pages like custom one, like the index one, where we have quite a few differences, and we have some button component in the docs that are a bit different. So yeah, so like Chris said, we have some style in the docs that predate Starlight, that were obviously written in a non-cascade layer world. To give an example, for example, we have custom button in both Starlight and Docs. The one we have in Docs hardcode some colors. Before it was overridden sometimes by Starlight, sometimes it was not. But now it's always winning, so button can look different. Maybe here it will not be blue, it will be white, or it's very easy to have changes. So I'm not sure what will be the best. Do people want to take a look at the code changes I made? Is there any interest in that? To me, to briefly go over them, or maybe just sharing the preview and people take a look at it only. I'm not sure what people would prefer.
I would say if there's anything, I would say let's scan through the code changes
We can,
in
yeah.
case there's anything interesting that you want to point out. Because again, this is kind of it's a great example of how we built Astro Docs and we did so much stuff to it and people loved it and people said, well, where's my docs template? So when I use the Astro Docs template, I get Astro Docs, and we're like, no, you don't. So we built Starlight.
Yeah.
And so now we try to do as many changes in Starlight as possible so that not only does Astro Docs get the benefit of the work, but everyone who uses the Starlight template gets the benefit. But because, as everyone said, Astro Docs predates Starlight, there are some Starlight uh, features that we don't use because we already have them. And in this particular case, now we're running up to, well, even just to update Starlight, we have to pull out some stuff that's currently in Astro Docs. So it's a really interesting challenge and very illustrative of how we have worked to make something really good for ourselves, and then what has to happen when you want to share it with people, and then trying to manage the two in tandem when one is so much older than the other. So yeah, a walkthrough of the big picture changes, as Chris said, would be great. I'll also be dropping these links in the YouTube chat for people who are watching, in case anyone wants to follow along there. And so yeah, if you take us through the changes, and then we'll post a preview link, and then anyone is free to click around, and Heidi, you can point out to us anything that you might suspect goes wrong, that we should take particular look at. So yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, so what do we have? Oh, this one is an easy file. We start with the Astro configuration. So I mentioned that in Docs we have heading links. Here we have that. I don't think on the stream you can see my mouse. I'm realizing that now. So around the prerequisite heading, after we have heading links. This is now built in into, yeah, no mouse, so I'll have to fix that for next time. So this is now built in into Starlight. So basically what we had before in our custom docs implementation, we just want to remove it entirely. So this is an easy change. Then we have components override in Starlight. This is something that allows you to extend or replace entirely some Starlight built-in components by your custom one. So to give an example, we have a right sidebar here with the talk, but in the default version, we don't have that screen bar offer. If you want to check it out at the same time, do not hesitate. So what we probably did, not the one who did that, Chris did, but I guess he overrode one component, maybe the sidebar, and added that that advertisement at the bottom. So what we did is remove actually some component overrides. I will actually show later why we can remove them now. We add a root middleware, which is, to give a brief overview, when Starlight from the page, we are going to build what we call the root data object, which contains pretty much everything that will be rendered on the page: the title, the heading, the content, the sidebar on this page, basically everything needed to render a page. But this gets really powerful because you can actually run middlewares on this data and actually mutate it. So it's very useful, for example, for plugins that want to change in all or some pages, some data. So we added one root middleware here. We'll show later why. This is a pretty minor Starlight change. We tweaked how we define social in Starlight during the update. So basically, before you had to use some known social networks, and we were automatically matching a social with an icon. But now you can just use any link with any name and any icon built into Starlight. So this is pretty minor changes to the configuration, mostly updating and removing some configuration. So this file is entirely removed. This was basically some remark plugin we were using to add heading links. So as this is now built into Starlight, we can just remove all that content and some of the dependencies sometimes. So we just remove that. Let me collapse file we went over. This one is pretty minor. Some functions that were exported just because we needed them to do links over headings. We don't need them to be exported anymore, so they are just no longer exported. We updated Starlight. This is our package.json file defining our dependencies. So we just updated Starlight. I tried to keep it, we could have updated, for example, Astro, but I wanted to keep it very Starlight focused. And I only needed to update an expressive code plugin. And otherwise, we pretty much removing some other dependencies. These were mostly used to do custom headings. So we just remove them. This is our log file. So here we have an interesting cascade layer changes. So I think, if I remember correctly, it's related to this join our Discord button here, which is using custom button component that we have in docs, but it hardcode some colors. I think it hardcodes the text color, for example, to be white. But if we take a look at the live version of this join our Discord button, it's actually light blue now in a dark theme. So we had to do some tweaking over this content, but I suggested that in the pull request. We now have in Starlight link buttons. This is pretty much the same button with different variation. We should be able, on the long run, to migrate entirely to this component, but it's not really mandatory for this pull request. So yeah, Chris is mentioning it's something interesting, like the fact that it's now in the live version currently blue may actually be a bug. So that's why it's tricky with Cascade Layer, because sometimes you will see something is having a red color, it's obviously wrong. There is something that needs to be fixed, but sometimes you get a slight difference, and does it need to be fixed to update and match the live version, or is the live version actually wrong? So this one can be tricky. So what I did, for example, for a case like this, is actually porting the blue color. But yeah, we will have cases where actually maybe we don't even need that changes. Maybe it should actually be white. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky. So this is pretty much some CSS changes for this. Oh yeah, we have some, let me go to a page, for example, I think it may be AstroDB. Where do we talk about Studio? We have, no. Well, I don't remember in which page, but we have a special heading for some features that... Oh, no. It's not visible in the live documentation anymore. It was removed, but some translation actually you still use that component. It's basically a custom heading that say some features are specific to Astro Studio, which was sunset. So before, it was getting its style just by using a level dash and a number class, but now it actually needs an extra class due to how it's implemented in Starlight. So, here we have something interesting. Yeah, it's really beautiful, Chris. I really like that style. But yeah, I don't even remember where I can see this. Maybe in Portuguese. Let me try. Oh yeah, maybe here. No, I cannot remember which page. I found it, but I don't remember. I can take a look later. So here we have something interesting. We have a component override. So one change we did in Starlight is now override don't read data from astro.props, but you read that from root data, which is now on locals by EMA. So this kind of change will be in many component override. We just say, okay, don't read this data from props, but read that from root data. Something interesting I did also, I'm not sure if it's gonna stay like this, but this edit link button, what is, oh yeah, so if we take a look at Starlight, we have an edit this page button at the bottom here. But in Docs, what we have is actually, let me switch to the English version. We have edit this. Okay, I think my mic went down for a few seconds. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, my microphone is acting weird. So yeah, in Docs we have edit this page, but we also have a link to translate this page. So we do that using component overrides, and it basically just add this link. So this override is not really different from the original Starlight component. So for overrides which are pretty much very close to the original Starlight implementation, what I did is use layers for them, because it will be very easier in the future to update these styles when we update them in Starlight. It's not mandatory, but I think it may just be easier on the long run. So maybe something to discuss with Chris or other people, but that's what I did. So here we will have a lot of overrides where we just remove props because this is no longer a thing in Starlight. Oh, and now we are getting to an interesting override we had in Astro Docs. It's the head override. So what this used to do is render the default head defined by Starlight, and after that adding some custom meta elements, some script. So this is just basically rendering the head and adding to it. So we'll see later, or maybe I can jump to it, how we do that now, but we are doing that using root data middleware. I talked about it earlier. So, oh yeah, here. Oh, I have to go back to the top to hide this thing. Oh. How is it called? Root data. Okay, here. So what we have now in Starlight is root data middleware. What is that? That's a good question. So for every page, you will get a callback that will be run against root data, and you'll be able basically to read some of the data or update the root data of the current page. For example, in our case, to add to the head root data, changing some pagination. So if we take a look at the update head function, what this is doing is basically doing exactly what we used to do in our override. We define some URLs and we add some meta tags to the head. So here we had an OG image tag, a Twitter image meta tag. We had our FASM analytics and some kinds of meta information for Algolia. So now we don't even need component overrides to do that. We can do that entirely in a root data middleware. And we have another one. Let me show you an example. If we go to the tutorial, we have some pagination here. But this was basically before entirely done in component override. Let me find it. Ah, here it was. So we had this pagination component override, which was checking, okay, is the current page a page of the tutorial? And if it is, override what is the previous and next links. So we can no longer do that, and we don't need an override for this. So we do that in our root data middleware. So I have a custom function for that. We check first, okay, is the current page a tutorial page? If it's not, okay, stop here, we are done. And if it is, we do basically exactly what we used to do. We just update the previous links and the next links. And this gives us in the new version tutorial, we have pagination. So this is pretty much, I think, entirely what we do in this pull request. So it's updating some Astro probes that are no longer used. Do we have confetti? I did not check. I was expecting you to check if we have confetti, of course. Oh, and we can also narrow. We have a Markdown content component override. It used to contain a lot of styles, but this was for Markdown heading links, so we can entirely remove that now. And I guess that's pretty much everything we did. Oh, this is an interesting one. We had a global CSS rule in a component that says, okay, if you are on the bird list, just add a padding left to all of them. So obviously before, Starlight would say, okay, I have a more specific rule and this will not be applied most of the time. But now it will be applied. So we have to be a bit more strict for this rule to properly work. So yeah, we may find some slight change in the UI. And oh yeah, a lot of files are just removing some text. So we would need probably some Lunaria magic commands to ignore that. We remove some content which we are using for heading links for screen reader, because we don't just announce what is the title of a section. We say, okay, this is a section titled followed by the title. So this is built into Starlight now, so we can remove that. And I guess that's it. I also know Sarah mentioned waiting for this update to potentially change the title of the tutorial page, because I think it was duplicated for multiple page, or I don't exactly remember. But this is where inside this middleware that we can now do that. In the head, when we are updating it, we could just add something that say, okay, if this page part of the tutorial, just like we're doing here, if this is the case, we'll update the title to something new. So that's pretty much
Yeah, I'm just
it.
looking. That is amazing. I checked, and I'm actually kind of surprised it's only 40 pages changed in the PR.
So
Um,
far, let's say, we don't know. I'm
so
gonna share
far.
the pull request the live preview in chat,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I
people
shared
can.
the link
Oh,
for the
thank you.
PR, but yes, the deploy
Yeah,
preview.
that's where
Drop that
we
link.
want people to have a look.
Yeah, and I'll note that yes, what this unlocks, there's a discussion in Docs. I'll just drop that link here too.
Oh, let me
This
kind of.
discussion was 2 pages with the same title, messing up search results. Had to do with adding an RSS feed.
Ah, yes.
And this is where we said, yeah, so different people tried searching it. We said, what do you get? Some people got like the actual, here's how you add an RSS feed show up first. Some people got the step in the tutorial, the little tutorial unit first. But yeah, they shouldn't have exactly the same title anyway. So yes, one of the solutions we thought was, well, when Starlight is updated and we can use Starlight's root data with middleware, we could just make sure all the tutorial pages are clearly marked as tutorial without having to change the title in Docs. Because if you're in the tutorial, you don't want to see every page to
Yeah,
start with tutorial. You already know you're there. Yeah, so what we're doing here, once this PR goes through, this unlocks being able to tackle this discussion here.
yeah.
Great. So Hideo, I know you've dropped the deploy link. Is there anything in particular people should be looking for? You know, I'm going to check to make sure we still have confetti,
Well,
because that's what I do.
yeah. Obviously, you'll check confetti, and I guess it's very tricky to say what to focus on. I would say, for people familiar with the documentation, I'd say any custom page may be a good candidate. For example, this one is using some components we don't have in Starlight. I know the tutorial is using some components we don't have in Starlight. Let me, for example, pick. Yes, for example, we have this test component where you can pick an answer, check if it's correct. Oh, I was correct. So this is a custom component, so definitely something to check. I know, for example, for a fact that this component is slightly different in this version. And the overflow is gone. Okay, I'm reading a command from Armand, so it did not notice anything broken. The overflow is gone because of the heading link. Sometimes the anchor icon was off, causing overflow. Oh, I see. It was in the Docs implementation. So if we go to the live version, let me find the page. So if I understand correctly, oh, we even have. Okay, so here we have. If we check, oh, it's gonna be maybe a bit tricky to show on stream. Let me show this page. So here we have a very long title. We get a very tiny here anchor heading link. And if we check now, let me copy the link to the updated version. You don't no longer get a very tiny icon. And one difference is that depending on the view space before, the anchor icon and the link was sometime on the left, sometime at the end. I think it may be on mobile at the end. Yes. So when you get a smaller viewport, it was at the end. Now it's more consistent. It's always at the end, and it fixed that kind of issue. Thanks, Chris, for that. I was always confusing myself. Okay, if this time the link's on the left, on the right, I'm going crazy. Where is the link? So yeah, it's way more consistent, and it's personal opinion way more usable now. So yeah, bug fixed. So yeah, if people just want to take a look, browse a few pages, compare that to the live version, see if they can spot huge issues or very tiny issues. Sometimes it's maybe just 2 pixel width or height difference, but so yeah.
So I've just dropped a link
Oh,
from Astro Docs, because that's one of the one of the consequences in Docs is so we have guidance on how to author, how to use our custom components like since when we want to say that a feature was added in a particular version. And you can see even in our guidance, the sidebar on the right, we have some custom components, and then we have ones that we are slowly starting to use that are just regular Starlight components. Um, this I try to keep this updated, but there may be some components that are more Starlight that we are using. But yes, so Astro Docs is a combination of all these components we built for ourselves. Then they got built more generically in Starlight. So in Astro Docs, sometimes there are two possible components we could have used, but certainly when you see these ones that are our custom components, this is exactly what this PR might affect, which is
yeah,
stuff that we had written and created previously. Then Starlight did it. Now we're using Starlight's styling. So as we, you translate to one language and you translate back to the other original. These are some of the components that it's worth checking
yeah,
to make sure that it just looks fine, that nothing looks off. And there's more, like the tutorial components we haven't listed here because generally speaking, those aren't ones that our contributors will need to use. Those are ones that are already in there, already built. They're not really changing. We don't expect more content added with those components. So yes, anything that looks like AstroDoc custom, those are the things we should be checking.
yeah. I mean, obviously, people should check the content and see if something. It can happen. Something is wrong in the middle of the content, which is not custom or anything, but it's way less likely. So,
And
yeah.
expressive code blocks, anything like that, making sure that the titles are rendered and everything like that.
Oh, I
Just in
also
case anything happens
dated
there.
in this pull request the. Let me find it. Uh, an expressive code component or plugin. I'm not even sure. I checked if it's still working. It's the plugin collapsible sections. So I guess one question is, do you know where
Ah,
you use this?
I have not used it. Does anyone know off the top of their head
Yeah, I can check
which
if needed, but where you use that, but I don't remember. Oh, isn't that in middleware?
yeah, I know I have never authored it myself. And in fact, there's all these things. There's so much added to expressive code that I don't even know all the things that we can do. Um, I think I only realized recently that we could, in fact,
Okay,
have
let's go
collapsible
to
code
the
in the doc.
expressive code docs. Search what is the syntax already for collapsible section. And we can.
So we can just search for that
Oh, it's
syntax in the
collapse
source.
equal. Oh, Chris may have found it. Okay, let me open that. Copy the link. Oh, damn it. So, let me open that in another window. It's the action guide. Okay, let's go to the action guide. Oh, it's here. No, wait. Okay. So let's find where this is used. Oh, here. We have collapsed
Oh,
lines here. So let me, it's validating form data. Let's go to, oh, I'm gonna copy the URL, it's gonna be easier.
And a reminder that if people are checking like also on mobile phones or your tablet, because these are CSS issues, even your device and your screen size and which browser you're using, all of these
Yeah, definitely.
matter.
And if people can also comment on the pull request directly, if they find issues, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be in chat, or it can be anywhere. Okay, it looks like we are using the form where you cannot recollapse. Is that correct? Let me check in the live version. Yes, it's behaving because I used recently this plugin too, and I use the one where you can recollapse. So I got confused. But yeah, it seems to be working as expected from EPO. We can see here it's our custom with more components. It seems to be rendering. Let me just like before. So looks
It's
like
also worth noting that that expressive code was first only Astro Docs.
yeah.
That expressive code was first. Hippo just augmenting our Astro Docs code snippets until they got so good that again everybody wanted to use it, and then it became its own standalone package that you can use in your projects too. So it has, yeah, we would have gone through similar things when adding expressive code officially to Astro Docs, probably when we converted to Starlight, I guess. I don't know if we had expressive code in Astro Docs before we converted to Starlight, which includes expressive code by default. But yeah, even though it means a little bit of extra checking and some being really careful as we sort of go cyclically with build it in Astro Docs first, take it out, build it somewhere else, and then add that thing to Astro Docs. It is it is really nice, and it's how we can get features in, how we can test it, how we can make sure it works well, and then build them for everybody else elsewhere. And our time is just spent integrating back. Oh, and I can see Jan in the chat. So I know, Hideo, you talked about the Lunaria keywords and comments we would need to make sure with some of these
Oh.
changes. So Jan, we're looking at the docs. Jan, we are looking at the docs PR to upgrade the version of Starlight. As you can imagine, it's a little big, not as big as I would have expected, yet, as Hideo says. So Jan will also want you to take a peek over the PR and just make sure that the Lunaria comments are
Yeah, I thought
working properly.
I found a bug, but actually it's like this in the live version.
So now we get to play bug in the PR or bug in
Yeah,
Astro.
but I mean, I'm using it's only like that because I'm zooming a lot. But maybe we should I should take a note of that, and maybe we can improve how it's rendering. But yes, at least it's not a regression because I'm comparing now two tabs, the live and the live
Right.
version and the deploy preview at the same zoom level. So yes, this one is a bit tricky, but no regression on that part. So it looks
So
like
anyone who's
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say anyone who's watching now, or, we're also streaming this to YouTube, and I know some people catch up after the fact. If this PR is still open, then we are still happy if at any time you test the AstroDocs pages from the deploy preview on all kinds of devices, screen sizes, resolutions. And as Hadio said, leave comments in the PR. So if you spot anything odd, leave a comment in the PR and let us know. things like which browser you were using, which screen size or viewport you were using. Was it mobile or tablet or desktop, something like that. You can still add those comments after the fact as long as the PR is open. And I guess even if it's closed, if you spot something and it doesn't appear to be fixed, then make sure to let us know. And even if you look through and you test a few things, and you don't find anything wrong, hi, Louise. If you don't find anything wrong, still leave a comment anyway,
Yeah.
because everyone who leaves a comment in the Docs PRs, it helps us to know that, you scanned through, you didn't see anything wrong. We also want to hear, yeah, I didn't see anything, looks fine. That gives us a little extra bit of confidence. And of course, if you leave a comment in a PR, then you get co-author credit on the PR, and you get one more notch on your Astro badge, where you get a nice little badge, and we calculate all your PR reviews and issues filed in addition to PRs that you might author and get merged and commits. So we want to make sure that all of these activities are recognized and rewarded, because a big PR like this needs a bunch of people looking at it, and that is super helpful. Whether you spot something, whether you don't, leave a comment in the Docs PR so that we know what experience you had looking through it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking through myself through some custom components or some pages, but at least it looks like it's okay. I think we may find a few other issues along the way, but at least
You have
it's
a
not that bad, I would say.
not worse than what we had before with any luck.
Yeah, hopefully.
Haidio, do you have a timeline in mind? Do you know when you think this PR might be merged? Is it going to sit open for a few more days,
I
till
think
next
I
week, or are
still
you hoping
want
to
to
merge it
test
soon?
it myself on mobile, which is something I mostly focus on desktop so far. I still want to take a look on mobile. Uh, and I guess after that, depending if people find some issues or not, and maybe we want Chris to take a look, see if he can spot in maybe in the. No, I did not. I could revive that. That's a good idea, I guess. The issue is
Oh,
that
sorry, go ahead, Haidio.
the issue is that it may be slow to iterate on that in Astro Docs, but yeah, you need to scope which page to test. So maybe I could make a list of custom pages, some content pages which use lots of different pattern components. Because to explain what we are talking about, let me see if I can find how to do that. Maybe if we fill, oh no, I know how to do that. Let me do that in another type. If I go to the Starlight changelog, when did we do here? No, this is a Tailwind package. Okay, here. If we go to the pull request where we implemented cascade layers, so basically what I did is wrote a little tool, which is no longer in the code, but basically it was opening a specific page of the Starlight documentation on the live version, taking a complete screenshot. Then it was automatically going to the same page on the build version locally using cascade layers. And it was taking another screenshot. And then it was using a tool to do some diffing on this image. And it was actually super helpful because we noticed some let me zoom on that, very tiny differences. So here, for example, between the live version and the local version, we can see, for example, here we have a caret icon. It was basically 2 pixels too much on the left in one of the version. So this is something that I myself totally missed when visually checking, because it's such a tiny differences. So this tool was really helpful for that. So we have another example here. So for whatever reason here, the badge heading on one of the version was totally off-centered. And this page, this is a screenshot of a page. This page is huge. Like if I think it was before we had pages for individual components. So this was a page that was listing all components in Starlight. So it was huge. So finding that this heading was maybe 15 or 20 pixel offset was just pretty much very hard to spot. But with this kind of tool, we can see very easily. We can spot them. So maybe I could dig the code for that and maybe apply it to a few pages in Astro Docs. Maybe it could give us spot some differences and maybe discuss, okay, is the differences expected? Was this wrong before? Is this wrong now? And maybe spot some issue we did not, even with more people looking at it. That's a good idea. I didn't think of that, Chris. It should be relatively easy. If I remember correctly from the pull request, I even built that outside of the Starlight code base. It was in the mono repo, but in a different package. So I guess it will be just a matter of grabbing back the code, updating some URLs, and letting the computer eat over running Playwright, building the docs at the same time. But I guess it could be helpful. Taking note of that. Yeah. It helped us before, maybe it can help us again. And it was pretty, let me find that pull request if I can. Oh no, maybe I can find the commit where I removed that code. Let me find it. Oh yeah, here. So it was not a lot of, so this was using Playwright. So basically we are creating some folders where we save our screenshot. Oh, here we have what is the production URL, which pages should we compare? And pretty much we say, okay, if you see more than this amount of difference in pixels, we just want an error. So here this is using Playwright to take screenshots, comparing them, saving them, but that's pretty much it. So that's not a lot of line. So yeah, we can do that. So to answer your initial question, Sarah, yeah, it may sit around a few more days. So we can get the time to do that. But
lots of time for people to jump in.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like 1 month or 3 weeks, not something like that, but maybe a few days. So if people still want to report something or just say, okay, I check it, it looks fine, do not hesitate. Should be around a few more days.
Who doesn't want to review PRs for the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, fun way to get involved, and again, really helpful because everybody else will just have like a variety of devices, and you'll be looking at it in a different way. Everyone will sort of randomly check different things. Maybe it's the part of the docs you go to most frequently. Yeah, that'd be super helpful. And yes, as we typically do, Heidi, do you want to just navigate to Astro Badges and show them what they've won if they add a comment to any Astro PR saying that they checked something and what result they got?
Yeah, let me grab the URL in this. Okay.
Right. Of course, we have lots of these badges. We have built with Astro badges that you can add to your own site, but we have our entire list of contributors for every contributor, anyone with any GitHub activity, including things like comments on PRs, reviews. You will have a badge, and then you can go and you can check more of your badges. You can see which levels you're at, which levels coming up, which repos you've contributed to. So it's just a fun little page, something that we hope gives back to you for all the contributions and all the different ways that you help us maintain Astro and the docs. So this counts all the repos. As you can see here, Armand has pull requests in several of the Astro repos.
Just
Yeah,
a few,
so
yeah.
lots of ways to get involved, and then you can see it all here.
Yeah.
Great. So that Docs PR going to be open. Take a look at it. There are two more sort of hefty Docs PR things going on right now. There's also Emma reported back that he's updated the PR we looked at earlier
Oh,
today. Um,
maybe I can share your
so we
screen if you want.
Oh, you want to share my screen again? Okay, I think I'm back on that PR. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it will be easier.
I I should be back on Emma's
Yeah, I
static header
think
adaptation
so.
function PR.
Let me check.
Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like it's you.
yeah, looking like it to me. Okay, so at the beginning of the call, we had a feature. We're adding a new feature for adapters. So if you're an adapter author and you build an adapter, there are a list of Astro features that your adapter can optionally choose to support and can support at different levels. You can have experimental support for something. You can have like full support for something. So Emma has built a new adapter function, which is experimental static headers. And originally, because the only use case we can conceive of right now, and maybe it's a good thing that Louise has already left the chat, because the only concrete use case we have right now is the experimental content security policy. This PR was framed as basically a content security policy feature. But the feature itself is actually much more generic. So we wanted to somewhat future proof and make it clear that this isn't just a CSP feature. This is, in fact, an adapter feature that will allow your adapter to receive headers for static pages and then let your adapter update configuration, for example, in the case of setting security policy, which becomes one case. So we looked through this. We talked about how we're going to reframe the PR, and Emma has updated the change set here now to make this just a more generic description of what this PR does. So I will drop this link in the chat too. Drop it in the YouTube chat for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Anyone similarly, we just talked about that is a big Emma. Okay. We just talked about hopping into PRs with reviews. That goes for the Astro repo too. The Astro repo, where the features are built, often contain either documentation or at the very least a change set describing the feature. So I'm often doing docs work in those PRs as well, or as we saw at the beginning, error messages, because those get built in the Astro repo. So if anyone wants to hop into Emma's revised PR and leave some comments, whether this now feels like a more generic adapter feature and we're just using content security policy as an example, this is something I'll look at more closely after the call. But anyone is welcome to go in and review and leave your thoughts. And does this description that'll end up in the change log accurately describe for the readers, for the community who will be using these features, the important part of the features themselves. Okay, so we'll catch up with that. You're welcome to hop into that PR. We have two things we could look at today. For the rest, well, we'll figure out how long everything takes. But the two things that are going on right now are tomorrow there will be a live, not live, tomorrow there will be an API bash for the new experimental live content collections feature that we'll be releasing, I think next week. I think next week we're releasing it. So we have some docs written for it. We could review the docs, we could see how the docs look, we give people a chance to know what to expect coming tomorrow, make you feel that much more confident to jump in and bash that API tomorrow when we get there. The other big thing on my plate is our current experimental responsive images feature in, again, next week, will become stable. It will no longer be experimental. It'll just be another thing you can do with images. And this was a particularly interesting and tricky challenge because I'll get to that page in Docs. Let me get there. Because when we document experimental features, just hop into dark mode. When we document experimental features, they show up down here. So we've got responsive images. Everything to do with responsive images is contained on this one page. Everything you need to know, how to enable it, what the feature is, the API, what your options are, what it looks like, it's all on one page. But out in stable land, when you have images, you're just generally speaking going to go to our images guide because you want to know about using images in Astro. And responsive images aren't as much a separate thing in this case. It's one other option for your image and picture component. You're also likely to need to go back to reference, but this time to the API reference to look up specific properties where you don't necessarily want to read a whole guide. You just want to check on types and what your options are. And you want to see just straight ahead, this is how I use this particular part of the API. So that's been a bit of a challenge to take documentation on one page that was guide information, it was reference information, it had some walkthrough examples so that you could get started. That's one thing that we do prioritize with our experimental documentation is if we want people to use it, we have to show them an example. Well, so like do that, this is how you use it. But then when it goes to regular documentation, it needs to spread all throughout the docs and it needs to feel seamless and it needs to fit in. And because we prefer not to duplicate content wherever possible, it also involves figuring out of all the experimental docs we've written where everything's been jumbled together, where does this piece of information best go based on its purpose, based on what people are going to be looking at. So there's two big things that have been on my plate this week, in addition to all of Emma's CSP PRs that have just been coming constantly. Does anyone have a preference? Do you want to see the brand new live collections API? Do we want to take a look at it in advance of tomorrow so that people know what they're up for, so that people can prep for it? Or do we want to go take a review of the image docs and see that we've accounted for everything from the old experimental page and that where we've chosen to integrate new docs make sense? Does anyone have a preference?
Well, I guess one question could be what would be the most helpful for you?
Um, I don't think it matters. I think maybe if people want to see the live content collection docs in advance of tomorrow, that might help make tomorrow go better for Matt. So
Let's
we
go.
could take a quick peek at those. Speak of those.
If you
All
offer, we're
right.
not gonna say no.
All right. Okay. So let me find which tab do I want here. I probably want to do this. Let's then open my PR inbox. Oh, and even an update since the call started. So I don't even know what's in here. Let's see. Now I can't remember if GitHub is going to take me down. It's so slow sometimes to the
I
new thing.
don't
No, it
think
doesn't take
so.
me.
Yeah, when you click a link like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me jump down and just see what might have happened here. Okay. Oh, just looks like Matt applied some suggestions since last there. So I think we're ready to go. So I will drop this PR deploy link here. Here's the PR we're currently going to look at. This is your first look at new content collections, live loading data, and then let's get the deploy preview. And then we'll take a look through that. And this will be experimental. Okay, and here's our deploy preview. Okay, so let's just hop into these. So again, like with any PR, you're welcome to be in a PR, leave a review, leave comments, even if the comment is just, hey, watch this on Talking and Docking. It was fun. Great to see it. Don't spot anything wrong with the docs. Perfectly great comments to leave. They just give us a little more assurance that, something didn't jump out as terribly wrong to you. That's super helpful. Can't overstate how helpful that is. Okay, so here we go. Tomorrow, um, get ready to join the API bash where we will be looking at live content collections. Live content collections are a new type of content collection that fetch their data at runtime rather than build time. This allows you to access frequently updated data from CMSs, APIs, databases, or other sources using the unified API without needing to rebuild your site when the data changes. So, fun fact, when we started this, um, so live content collections, and the live is referring to your live, updating, loaded up to the moment data. So then when the PR was PR was submitted before I even read it, I said, okay, Matt, so if we've just created this new kind of content collection, what name are we using for the old ones? Because now we need a way to distinguish them. We can't just say live and what's the other name going to be? And as suspected, Matt was like, yeah, wasn't sure yet. I just called them regular. Like, no, of course we're not going to stick with regular. So Matt and I had to have a little bit of a brainstorming discussion, like, what are we going to call the collections that are not live? So you can help by, as we go through the document, you'll see we typically refer to them as build time collections. So we've got live collections, we've got build time collections. I think in one place we tested using preloaded collections to, again, think of the contrast we use with pre-rendered pages versus pages rendered on demand. Not sure if we like preloaded or if that'll stick, but generally speaking, we wanted a name that described the difference, that described what the old regular collections really were that was different from live collections. So right now, the name we're going with is build time collections. But if anyone finds that confusing, thinks they have a better name, then go for it. I don't think we're changing the name of live collections, but if you have something great that is even more exciting than live, you can certainly let us know that. But that's the first thing is we had to do before I even read the thing. I'm like, okay, what are we calling the other collections? Because we know we're going to have to describe these in comparison to the current content collections as they exist. Yeah, exactly, Heidi. That was one of the things I came up with static collections too. Um, but if the thing we also found that we always had to tell people that content collections were a build time feature, right, in the past. So we thought maybe that is at least explicit. So that's where we're going. So these are live content collections, new type of content collection. They're not generated at build time. Okay, with any experimental feature, and we do have documentation in Astro Docs as to how to document an experimental feature. We got to show configuring the experimental flag. And now we need to create a new live config TS file that will live alongside a content config TS file if you happen to have other collections. So your live collections are actually entirely kept separate from your, I almost said regular, from your build time collections. It looks, the file will look similar. You will be importing define collection to define it. What distinguishes these is these have a type. Now, if you've been using content collections for a while, first we had content collections, then it was possible to have data collections. So we introduced this type, and you had to specify if your type was content or data. Then our build time collections using the content layer API don't have to specify type because we don't even care what type the data is. So that type was referring to type of data. Here, now we specify these as type of collection, which is live, and we've still got a loader. But live loaders are going to work. They're going to work the same as build time content collection loaders, but they're built a bit differently because obviously it's they have to they themselves have to fetch data at runtime, not build time. But otherwise, this should look pretty familiar compared to build time collections. We have comparable but not identical get live collection and get live entry functions so that it matches your experience using build time collections. But because these live collections are differently, they're configured differently, their loaders are built differently, we wanted to make it explicit when you are when you are querying these live collections and their entries. So we gave the functions slightly different names. Otherwise, it's going to look very, very familiar. Now, one difference you might see in these examples for querying the entire collection, um, querying individual entries, is error handling. So we will get there, I think, very, very quickly after the when. I just want to get to the point where live loaders are more subject to network issues, API errors, validation problems. So you will see we have tried in most of these examples do contain some sort of nod to error handling because we want to prompt people to be checking for that as you're using these kinds of loaders. So you'll see error handling a lot in the documentation examples. I'm just going to make sure that I'm checking chat. Oh, yay, Matthew's here. Good, good. Oh, and you showed up just in time to get ready for tomorrow's API bash. Okay, so when to use live content collections. So this was this was actually one of the most recent edits that Matt made when we checked the new stuff here. So originally, this was the first item listed here, that your data updates frequently, and it didn't say up to the minute. It just said you have product inventory, prices, availability. One thing we've noticed from collections is it seems like a lot of people thought their logs updated frequently because they had a post every day. And what do you mean? I have to rebuild my site every day for new data? And we wanted to really make it explicit that these live content collections, because there are some limitations and trade-offs, which we'll get to down here, really is for data that you need closer to real time than like, updating a blog post every day. So we are suggesting when to use live content collections, real-time information like the current stock prices. You want to avoid constant rebuilds. There are cases where rebuilds are costly to you, and maybe then avoiding the rebuilds outweighs the performance hit of the live content collections. Your data updates frequently, and we try to nudge you to like a more extreme version of frequently than because we don't know how you're going to interpret frequently. You need to pass dynamic filters based on user input or request parameters. Or I don't know if we have any of them on the call today. You're building preview functionality for a CMS. So your editor might need to see that draft content immediately. These are cases when the live content collections really will shine, in contrast to the build time collections, where your data is relatively static. You're not updating too often. Performance is more critical and optimization because in fact, right now, live content collections will not process MDX and they will not perform image optimization. So these are some of the limitations and differences from the build time collection. So we've tried to show you what it looks like, what configuring it looks like. It should look pretty familiar. You'll see more stuff related to errors, and then help you decide when you actually use them. So using them should look pretty similar to using content collections. One issue with these live loaders is there are no built-in Astro loaders as there are with build time collections. So when you're using Astro's content layer backed build time collections, we have the file loader if all your entries are just in one big file, and we have the glob loader if all your entries are local in your project, but you have a different file, like a markdown file or an MDX file per entry. We can't do that with a live loader because there's nothing built in. There's no data source that we know predictably and can therefore build a loader. So one stumbling block is you're going to have to build your own loader for the data source that you're querying, or as we've said here, use loaders that are distributed as NPM packages. I thought I edited this and I thought it updated, but I don't see it updated right now. Okay, sorry, just something. I was going to link here to the to our guide on publishing NPM packages and state the unless I do that later, maybe that's down with creating a live loader. And then show the keywords that you add so they get picked up into Astro's integrations directory. So that is one stumbling block to people using these immediately is you'll need your own data source and you'll need to actually build your own loader. So there's an example of doing one here. Excuse me. And then as we talked about error handling, we're just introducing a host of more potential for something to go wrong when you are querying this live data. So there could be any number of errors. So we're giving advice on handling that error, how to deal with it. Creating a live loader. So we've got a load collection and a load entry. So basically your loaders have to return data, a big data object or an error so that it can be parsed. So errors are very important in live loaders. Rendering content in use is going to look pretty familiar to rendering content with build time collections. If your this is something new that Matt added recently. If your loader returns this rendered property here, then you get access to the render function and content component like you do with build time collections. So then you can use them exactly as you're expecting to use them. You can also handle the errors if you get an error instead of you getting content. More about error handling in loaders because who knows what's going to happen. Oh, okay. This is what Matt did. He made a separate section for distributing your loader. Perfect. Yep. Publish it to NPM with the special keywords and it'll show up and people can use it. That will be like from our end, one of the things that we're hoping people will do early and quickly because again, we have no built-in loaders. You can enable this feature, but there's nothing for you to get started with immediately unless you're building a loader. So if we have some community ones for popular data sources, that would be great. Type safety is basically what you're expecting. However, loaders themselves can also incorporate type safety with their data. So you can do all this at the loader level and custom error types. And just like with build time collections, you can optionally add a Zod schema, and then this will take effect after the loader's data. So anything in your schema will override the types from your loader itself. But then this is all set the exact same way that build time is using Zod. Optional, you could choose to handle all your type safety in your loader. You could choose to do none of it. If you just want to fly by the seat of your pants, that's fine too. There's a little bit about cache hints. Caching isn't provided, but you can use these values to build your own caching strategy. Because if the data is coming fast and furious, could be real time, you're going to need to now think about caching where you probably didn't as much incorporate it into your strategy with build time collections. All right, so we talked a little bit about live collection limitations, no MDX support, no image optimization. Data is fetched on each request. So either a caching strategy or you're taking that performance hit. And the data from live collection loaders are not saved to the content layer. So there's no persistent data store. Differences from build time collections. Run at request time instead of build time. We've got a different configuration file. You do have to set a type of your collection, indicate that it's a live collection. The loader API is different for live loaders because the data source and frequency is different. You're going to return data directly instead of storing it in the data store. And your user-facing functions are analogous, but they are not identical. We wanted to make it explicit when you're doing this. You're using get live collection and get live entry because you can have both kinds of collections in your project. But because they work so differently, it also let us build separate functions rather than try to make get collection handle, like be smart, figure out what kind of collection it is, do different things in different cases. We just made separate functions. And there you go. So I'll catch up with the chat. Okay, yeah, so again, tomorrow, it's usually around the same time as talking and docking. The TBD is going to be the Content Loaders API bash. So I know Matt is preparing that right now. Preparing he's preparing an exercise, a walkthrough, so that everybody can test this. So we've looked at the docs to see what it's going to look like. Is this feature usable? It'll be released next week, so you can use it experimentally next week. You can use it experimentally tomorrow if you join the API bash, because Matt will let you know how to do that. Do I know if the exercise will include building a simple loader? I know that Matt is working on that. I know that he set up like a little test e-commerce project. So I don't know if he'll sort of recreate that and build that live with you, or whether he'll just show it to you. But so there will be an example. I mean, there sort of has to be an example of a loader. Otherwise, you can't test the feature, right? So that's what makes this a little bit more higher of a barrier to entry, a little bit more friction than when we introduced content collections. So the not having a built-in loader, yeah, means hopefully we hope people are going to publish community loaders for common data sources, even at least 4 tests, right? So people can try. And then once you have your own data source, you'll have models maybe for how to adapt it. So that is the feature. I guess immediately what would be helpful to know is if there appears to be anything confusing or missing from from those docs. I know we're not all doing like full docs reviews here, but are there any questions that jumped up that didn't appear to be answered? Like, do you feel ready for an API bash tomorrow? I guess would be the criteria for today. Does that feel like you would have enough information to jump in and try to use this feature? So that's one question. Just the second is any comments, any concerns, anything that you're thinking about. Okay, so if I join the API bash tomorrow, so Matthew has been asking in the chat, do you know if the exercise will include building a sample loader? Like, I expect that to be one thing um, that people are anxious about, because building a loader, even build time loaders, right? It can be really simple. It can be as concise as just a fetch call to a Pokemon API, and you can build a loader. You can have a loader, but I understand that that maybe feels a little overwhelming if you haven't seen one. Matthew says he's just ready to dive in and blast. Yep, that's what we're going to want tomorrow. So we want to sort of create a little bit of hype, get people a little bit familiar with what's going to happen. That means that between now and tomorrow, if you think of a particular data source you might have that you might want to query that frequently, um, yeah, then you have like 24 hours to start thinking about what data source am I going to test this with, right? Do I have something ready to go? But otherwise, Matt will, using these API bashes, there are instructions set out, you're following some examples and then reporting back on your experience. Is there anything that anyone wants to chime in with about that?
There is a little tiny thing. I managed to understand it, but it was. I had to. Except maybe I just missed it. But I had to jump in a various places of the page to understand everything. For example, if you jump to the. Let me find an example. Where do we show that first? If we go to the error handling in loaders, and if you scroll, if you
error handling in loaders.
Oh yeah, that was the one. And go back.
That might be our first clue right there. That we have 2 different places when you go to error handling on this one. Oh no, this one. Yeah, this is why we do this one. Yes.
So maybe this one. And if you scroll a little bit down in the return type of the live loader, it's the first line on the screen right now. Live loader, and we have we accept some generic arguments. It says my data undefined my loader error. There is, except if I miss it, no obvious places. Even if we go to the type safety data, where I can see, okay, the first, it accepts at most 4 generics. The first one is the data, the second one is the filter, I don't know what the third one is, I already forgot, and the last one is an error. You have to piece that together from various examples all around the places. Yep. So that would be maybe having a small section that say, okay, the first one is that, the second one is that.
Okay, so we've got types,
First
for
one, I think, is the type of
not-
data. Second one is the entry filter. The second one is the collection filter. And the last one is the error type. But if you don't have filters, that's what's happening in the example on your screen. You just have a data,
Mhm.
undefined no loader, no filter, undefined no collection filter, and the error type.
Right. Okay.
So yes,
Yes, in fact,
bringing
one
that
thought I
together.
had yesterday.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
one thought I had yesterday is sometimes in these experimental docs, what we'll do at the very, very end is we'll essentially just put an API section.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
good.
where like we make sure that we list all those like all the types, all the, load collection, where just everything is down there. So yes, that would be great. That would be a great exercise. So we'll go through everything that we mentioned here. And we'll make sure it's all dropped at the bottom so that people can just quickly access um, the the types and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So I will make a note of that. We'll add an API section bottom. There might be someone on the call who is ideally suited to do such a thing, but I will add that as a task that we want to do before the before the call tomorrow. Sounds great.
And
Thank you for
yes,
that.
maybe error handling in loaders.
Yeah, so then we had, yeah, it's
It's a tricky
as I
one, I
mentioned
guess.
as we went through, yeah, that error handling is a big deal.
Yeah.
So we've got error handling done by your loader, um, error handling, yeah. Yeah, I bet we could probably combine the two error
Or maybe
handlings.
there is another possibility. I don't know if it could be any good or not.
Mhm.
We could have an entire section about error handling, and one could be how do you handle errors in a loader, and one how do you handle error when consuming data from a live loader.
Right. So in a loader and then consuming live data. Yeah, it's these things, live data from a loader. These things always get tricky because, so if you're creating a loader and the loader's going to handle some errors, then does that go
Yeah.
inside creating a loader, right, in your steps? And then when you're using, I'm assuming using is also not a great word. We try to avoid it. Like, what are you actually doing? And maybe this is the rendering the content probably. Yeah, this is like the query. This actually looks like querying more than rendering. So yes, when you're querying, you also want some error handling there. But yeah, maybe but it's a good call, and it's something that we're fighting with. That error handling is a huge part of this feature. Um, Whereas it wasn't as much with the other collections, especially when you could use um, built-in loaders or data that was already in your project. There was just a lot more that was known then, so there's a lot more attention to error handling. But yes, figuring out how we make the error handling easy to get to. Yes, and as Matthew said, and as Heidi had said before, there's building your loader to deal with errors that it receives, and then there's the once you've used your loader, um, dealing with the error that way. All right. Anything else anyone wants to chat about live content collections? Get a good night's sleep tonight, so you're ready for tomorrow's excitement.
Yeah, it would be great. And I think the documentation that you're showing is already super great. Like, I'm pretty sure, obviously, people will give feedback, and maybe we're missing some obvious pieces. But it's already just amazing material to create and to use in an API bash. So it
Yep.
would be
And the
great.
one thing I will check, the other thing I'm going to check on that I don't think I've checked yet with this PR is often with experimental features. So you can see the table of contents on the page here. Typically in a doc site, we would have level 2 and level 3 headings, and that's all we show. Often in reference pages, we'll go to town. We'll show you every heading here. And it was especially useful, I think, for the fonts API bash. We did this for experimental fonts. We were like, no, if it's a heading, it's showing up here. Because if you're, we only have that hour with Matt and it's all fun and everything goes quickly, and you may want to just jump to something quickly. So I think that's the third thing I will do for these experimental features. I often do like to expand the table of contents to show very obvious headings so that you can see as much as possible when it's a feature that, as we've seen, might not yet be perfectly polished and documented, but we do want to give you a chance to find quickly what you need. Great. And yes, Matthew, this was streamed on YouTube again. That is our normal MO unless something comes up. We haven't been making a big fuss out of it since the first time. We just sort of we go live, we let it go. I will make a talking and docking playlist. I don't know if we'll, set live streams up and countdowns and subscribe and stuff ahead of time. Uh, Especially when we don't always necessarily know what we're doing from week to week, feels like going a little overboard for just our casual talking and docking. But if we put them in a playlist, at least they should be easier to find after the fact. So yes, you can go rewind, you can watch what you missed, um, and and all the PRs we talked about today, links have been dropped. You are more than welcome to hop into the reviews and leave some comments, good or bad, or just I was there on talking and docking, because that's participating. It would feel pretty weird if Heidi and I were just here chatting to ourselves and annotating what we do as we go through it. So even just you being here gives us a reason to do this. So you helped, you participated. Um, yeah, and I guess that looks to be our time. So Heidi, thank you again for all the taking care of all the streaming and the video work behind the scenes. And thank you everyone for showing up and chatting and participating and leaving helpful comments and checking out the docs preview of the Starlight upgrade PR. And I mean, we got confetti, so how bad could it be, right? But if you notice anything, hop in the PRs and get some credit for your Astro badge. And with that, I think we're ready to stop streaming. And I'll tackle some of these things that came up in the docs PR. We've got Emma's um, revised PR that needs taken a look at, and that's what we're going to be doing. And next tomorrow, the API bash with Matt for the live content collections, which you will see released next week. They'll be available with that experimental flag next week, as will responsive images just in your stable images. So we're still working on getting those docs together. So it's going to be an exciting time. Thanks everyone for joining, for helping out, for participating. And as far as I know, we're going to do this again next week. So we will see you then. Thanks, everybody.